Thank you. First, let me play the role of host rather than the role of speaker here. So it's been amazing to listen to such a stellar lineup of folks. I've learned a lot, and I hope I can add something of value. But first of all, thank you, all of you, for being here and for sharing your knowledge and insights and humor with us. Thank you. Sometimes sustainability, that phrase, gets a bad rap, right? And it gets a bad rap because at one level you think of sustainability and say, I've got to keep going, right? I mean, that's literally what sustainability means. It means the ability to keep doing what you're doing. And yes, it's better than the ability to not be able to do, what you're doing. But it's not a totally inspiring view. And so some folks use other phrases, that might be a little bit more inspiring than sustainability. Phrases like regeneration, phrases like flourishing. And so I'm going to use those phrases. And to be fair, almost all of our speakers who have talked about sustainability today, even though they spoke about sustainability, they were really talking about building a future that is better than what we have today. Because sustainability would simply mean let us try and maintain what we have today. So we'll switch the conversation a little bit, because I think the previous speakers already have, to looking at flourishing and to looking at regeneration, meaning looking to do something better than what we have today, where simply doing what we're doing isn't good enough, that we need to imagine a world that's better, not just one that's not worse. Now, as we talk about this kind of regeneration or flourishing, we can look at it in terms of what we think of it personally and what it means for the planet, what it means for society. So that triad, or the bullseye that all our speakers have talked about, absolutely holds true. But I want to focus on you as a person. And maybe that's where I might differ a little bit and offer up some dean-like advice to you, if you will. What does it mean to be a flourishing person? Because if you as an individual are not sustainable or flourishing or regenerative yourself, there is no way you can bring the energy that is required to make the planet and to make society a flourishing one. When an aircraft hits turbulence, they say, put the oxygen on yourself before you look to assist passengers. And that's the same thing. Self-care is required in order for us to then be able to leverage our healthy selves to serve others. So let's then focus on sort of some reflections on personal sustainability and personal flourishing. And one of the invitees, or one of the organizers of this event, said, rather than just doing your usual intellectual stuff, could you make something a little bit personal? So here's my attempt at putting together 3 reflections, that might help you understand how at least I think about flourishing as an individual, and maybe some lessons there that you can take away. So let's begin with sort of the 1990s. The 1990s, many of you were not born, I know that, were a great decade. The music was cool. I did my MBA then. I got married to a lovely, beautiful woman. We basically had a huge amount of fun, visited Africa, went on safaris, went to the Amazon, went to Machu Picchu, traveled all over the place, all over the world, joined a management consulting firm, was a very, very successful consultant, made lots and lots of money, became a US citizen in 1997, so life was pretty good. So one would argue there was nothing wrong with probably continuing along that particular trajectory. It was a nice decade. And then, in January of 1998, this happened. And this changed my life. It made me realize that no matter how happy you are, there is a level that is above whatever it is you might currently be feeling. So as I held my baby girl, almost 28 years ago to this day, in my arms, I realized that whatever I thought I had achieved, whatever I thought made me the successful, happy person, was nothing compared to the kinds of things I was feeling at that time. As you looked at this child and you said, I don't think I can ever, with all due respect to all the others I've loved, I don't think I can ever love somebody the way I love this particular new creature. The fact that you would give up your life in an instant to protect this precious new life. Feelings you had never had before. And then I realized, sustainability is great, but there is always a level above wherever you might happen to be. And so perhaps this was my introduction to the fact that there is this superior layer I hadn't actually thought about that one might call flourishing. Now, with that in mind, as a curious student, I sort of tried to understand what it is that makes people flourish. What kind of an environment allows people to be flourishing individuals. And I've stumbled upon, and over the years, I've spent time on, forgive me for being a little bit intellectual again, on these 5 factors that basically drive sustainability at an individual level and that drive flourishing at an individual level. So let me just share these 5 factors with you, but then I will personalize it and apply it to how I have used it in my life to make decisions. And I hope some of you who are here can use exactly the same framework in order to make decisions in terms of your careers, what you need to do next, and so on. Positive psychology basically points out that people flourish or thrive, different words, when certain conditions are met. They need to be in a positive environment. That positive energy is something you draw from the environment around you. You need to be doing things that you find engaging, right? So you've got the P, you've got the E. You need to have relationships around you that are healthy. And these are not necessarily just a positive environment. These might be specific relationships that you need. Whatever you're doing, you need to find a sense of meaning in that. And these are some of the things that you don't think about. Whatever you're doing, you need to feel you're good at it. So the fact that you have an ability to do whatever it is that is giving you meaning is an important part as well. People want to feel a sense of accomplishment in anything they do. These 5 things, along with the fact that you're learning something new, essentially, these 6 factors make up for a flourishing environment and a flourishing human being. It's often referred to as PERMA. It's an easy thing to remember, P-E-R-M-A-L. Now, it feels kind of abstract, but it isn't. And I'm going to share with you probably one of the larger transitions I made in my career, because this PERMA equation just wasn't working out for me. And now, in hindsight, when I think about every career jump I have made, and my young friend here asked me, who's by the way my daughter's age, my young friend here asked me, why did you move? And again, I think I can explain it quite clearly using these PERMA principles, and their meaning or impact was essentially what I focused on. So I was a successful management consultant at PRTM. I was probably one of the best management consultants in a firm of 400, and I state that, with no false modesty or humble bragging, I just was. All right. Now, if I looked at PERMA at that point, I had a positive environment, and I'm going to make the case these are all dependent and interdependent variables. A point that Sujit, one of our speakers was making about, everything being interdependent. So you had a positive environment. I was tremendously engaged in the kind of work we did. It truly was fantastic. Best job I've ever had in my career in terms of that kind of engagement. The relationships around me, both at a personal level and inside my company, were awesome. The meaning part, at that point in my life, I felt I actually was making an impact because I was getting to do things I would not otherwise have gotten to do with that kind of experience I had if I had been in any other position. And the accomplishment part, that was my pride and joy. I knew I was kick-ass good. And from a learning point of view, every day was a new adventure. So collectively, this basically created an environment where I couldn't conceive of doing another job. I was sold. I was going to be a management consultant. And that wasn't my dream to begin with. But now that I was there, I sort of said, I can't imagine doing anything else because this PERMA-L combination is working so beautifully. And they were all interrelated, as I later found out. It was the accomplishment to some degree that led to the positivity in the environment around it, and so forth. And then, as it happens to good, successful people in any organization, you get promoted to the highest level. So I became a partner at a consulting firm. And I realized I sucked. And the reason was the criteria for being a great partner were quite different than the criteria for being a great consultant. And suddenly my sense of accomplishment, which was the fuel that had sustained me, just disappeared. Because the metric, the hallmark of success for a successful partner is the amount of business you sell. You're fundamentally a sales guy. A consultant is fundamentally a problem solver. So when you go from being a consultant to being a partner, you're essentially changing your success metric entirely. And I really wasn't that good at that, at least certainly not amongst the best. And so that feeling of lack of accomplishment in my case essentially ended up with the positive environment around me disappearing because a lot of the positivity came from the fact that I was as good as I was. So suddenly not so good, suddenly not so a positive environment, still lots and lots of cash and so forth. But it no longer was a sustainable or a flourishing kind of environment for me. And so I made the decision, perhaps, to do what nobody had done in that firm, which is to walk away after becoming a partner, 1 year post becoming a partner, because I didn't feel it was a flourishing environment. And I think you will find yourselves in your careers, in your different life junctures, trying to figure out what the right next thing to do is for you. And I would suggest that you think about these simple 6 variables and the interrelationship between them, and figure out if you are in a situation where you have an opportunity to actually increase your PERMA quotient. And if you do, and it could come just from learning, by the way, and if you do, go ahead and do it. Now, it'll depend on you as an individual in terms of what you regard as a sense of accomplishment. Some people view their salaries and what they make by way of compensation as a mark of accomplishment. In my case, it was just how good I felt I was. But that's up to you. But if you look at these 6 variables, I think you'll be able to figure out from time to time what it is that flourishing truly means for you. The last reflection I want to talk about is basically what flourishing meant for my mother. And if I get emotional, I apologize for that. This is my mom at SPJIMR a couple of years ago. She had just recovered from cancer, and she was visiting me. She never actually took a session, right? She would have been great if she had. But this is my mom basically pretending to be a faculty member. But I can't think of very many people who deserve to be a faculty member more than her. You see, what my mom did by way of flourishing was interesting. Back in the 50s and 60s and so on, my mom got married in the 50s. If you were a smart woman, like my mother was, and you married a person, like my dad was a great civil engineer in the government, you followed your husband. You went wherever your husband was. You built your life around your husband. You built your life around your family. And that's what she did. And so she lived in places like Gandhi Sagar Dam, in the Chambal ravines, all kinds of places that basically were quite remote. So she completed her degree using a correspondence school approach. And no matter where she went, though, she found a way to create an environment around her that gave her a sense of meaning. She created a Carnatic music group wherever she ended up going. She essentially, took charge, at least as a mother. The fact that she wanted to turn her son into a good public speaker, good job, I hope. Right? And she wrote out my speeches for me in the early days of competition because she was building essentially an environment and a sense of engagement with whatever resources were available to her at that time. But then she discovered her true calling later on, which was that of a teacher. In my dad's last job, he had a driver whose name was Oja, whose family had never gone to school beyond 10th standard. And my mother coached that young girl from 6th standard onwards all the way to medical school, right? First person in the family that actually went to college. And so, with that knowledge that she actually was a fantastic teacher, she went into the retirement community that she did after my father passed away to begin to teach Kannada to Tamilians in Bangalore, right? The interesting thing about, Karnataka or Bangalore is you can actually live in Bangalore without knowing Kannada, right? But increasingly, there were a whole group of Tamilians, and my mother knew Tamil quite well as well, even though we are Kannadigas. And she decided that that was what she was going to do. She was an unbelievable teacher. When COVID hit, when teachers and schools were trying to figure out what to do, my mom figured out how to use Zoom, right? So she had 15 other 70 and 80-year-olds in a Zoom session with her as she was teaching them Kannada, even through COVID. She had customized lesson plans for each of them. A month before she died, I was going through her stuff, books and all, knowing that the end was near. And she was writing out a lesson plan for a session she was conducting 4 days from then. She probably lived another 3 weeks. But she felt it was important to finish her job as a teacher. So she built a customized lesson plan. And honestly, I don't think any of our faculty members could have done that, not me. So what she did was she basically ended up building a flourishing environment around her, no matter what was thrown at her. The level of engagement she had, the meaning she felt, she brought it. She created all of that. So we don't have to take what's given. And that's my final point. We're not necessarily victims of our circumstances. We have the ability to create that environment around us. We have the ability to find meaning no matter where we find ourselves. We have the ability to be amazingly good at what we choose to be. And we have the ability to have a sense of meaning. We have an ability to be flourishing and sustainable ourselves. And then with that, make the world a better place for everybody else. So to you, my friends, what I would wish to you as we wrap up today is search for that next gear in your life. Don't settle for, I will keep it going because life is great. It could always be better. Note that you have these tools that allow you to make good decisions, and note that you are the master of your own destiny, that you can actually control these variables. You can get out of situations, get into situations, and create situations that allow you to sustain yourselves and flourish personally. With that, thank you.